So we're discussing great ads, and you guys have submitted some ads. Let me just make sure that yep, it is working. Got it. All right. So why did you choose that ad?
So Liquid Death, it's not offering anything new or groundbreaking. It's water in a can.
Okay.
But they were founded in 2017, so they have about 6 years under their belt. They're roughly estimated at $700 million, and within their 5th year of operations, they were able to afford a Super Bowl ad. That was a Super Bowl. And what they're doing is creating a kind of a cult following just around marketing. It's purely marketing. And something like that is so groundbreaking. Well, not groundbreaking, it's polarizing, where people are going to see it and go, what the hell is this? What is going on? And then at the end, throwing it in with it's just water. It's a way to catch people's attention when they're already attentive. A ton of people watch the Super Bowl.
Just for the ads.
Yes.
Just for the ads.
And I remember that was like trending on Twitter afterwards. It was a big deal. And I thought, why not? It's a fun one.
So you think it's a great ad because it's fun?
I think it's a good ad because I think the purpose of advertising is to draw people's attention, and even in the advertisement, but also in the way that they have the can looking, it looks like it's alcohol, like or it's beer of some sort. And so.
So do you think the purpose of a great ad is to get attention? Is that right?
So one of the things I think sets it apart is, and this, could bite me by saying this, but can anyone think of another water ad right now? Like a marketing campaign for water? Fiji. And Fiji's like considered one of the best of the average consumer market. So just there alone, they're skipping huge companies, Dasani, Aquafina, Nestle, and they're going straight for the top market in ads. And now they're huge, and they're building this cult following where it doesn't matter what they're offering, people are going to get it because they like the way it's presented. It's almost like an Apple or a Nike, where after a certain point, it doesn't matter what the product is as long as it has the logo.
I mean, if someone has never heard of Liquid Death before and they see that, I think it would encourage them to do their own research into it. Obviously they don't know everything just based on that ad.
Right.
But if they're like, oh my God, are those kids drinking beer? Or like, why do they have this pregnant woman drinking? They're probably going to look it up and familiarize them.
So you think that it will drive consumers to research, I guess, the ad? All right.
And it's going to stick in people's memory. Whether they remember the name or not, they're going to remember some offensive water brand. And
some offensive water brand.
Yeah.
So you think it's offensive?
To some, that's one of the ethical issues, is there are absolutely people that are going to be offended by that, which, all publicity is good publicity in the end, because the more people, get upset and go, oh, that was revolting on Twitter,
They're still talking about it.
they're trending.
Right. That's true. So you think that the ethical, what do you think is the biggest ethical issue with that ad?
I would say the implication, it's kind of like, the separation of the artist from the art in a way, where people say, do you support a stand-up comedian that's saying, offensive things, even though it's a joke?
Right.
This is the same thing. It's a joke, but you're implying that kids are drinking. You're implying that a pregnant woman is drinking. And by that implication, you're saying that, the mother is putting her wants above the safety of her child. We know that's not true, but some people, that may have a history or a more sensitive palate won't like that.
The background music is also breaking the law, which implies like a sort of loose interpretation of, what we should be doing.
Yeah.
I think using children in advertising is always ethically problematic.
Yeah.
Because are you violating, how much how much of an ability to say no do they really have? Particularly, I mean, kids who are in the entertainment industry, you know, I mean, there are some that get into it because they want to, but a lot of them that get into it, it's because their parents drag them
Yeah.
to every audition and I mean, not make them, but I mean.
Well, in a way,
It's-
you know,
it is.
there's a reason Jeanette McCurdy released a book called I'm Glad My Mother's Dead, and it was a New York Times bestseller.
Right. So I think that using children is always ethically problematic. The product itself, I think actually has some ethically positive
Yes.
aspects to it, which is basically what they're saying is like, if you're gonna buy bottled water, we're doing colossal damage to this planet by, you know, creating massive amounts of waste, which a lot of that waste ends up in our water system, and a lot of it ends up, I mean, there's a massive amount of debris that is floating around
Yeah.
in the ocean. And how are we going to deal with that issue? And so this is, what they're offering is a product that is,
A sustainable solution.
right, it's, let's put it in a can, which everybody can recycle. As opposed to, it's useful as opposed to plastic, which we can recycle, but
It's not lucrative
it's
anymore.
not, yeah, it's not as easy to do as, I mean, obviously aluminum is, there's lots of aluminum recycling, so, yeah.
The brand also promotes like getting away from alcohol. Like I know that ad said like kind of enticing that, but like I know a lot of like AA members, it's the feeling of a beer.
Yeah.
Right,
It's
yeah.
water.
Right.
It's like the look, so you're tricking your mind to just grab for that. So
Okay. There are, I don't know if there's still one open in Oklahoma City, but there used to be something called the Sober Club, which was basically a bar-like atmosphere for people that were, you know, in recovery, but still wanted to go out and, you know, have a club-like experience, because one of the things that they teach you when you go to whiskey school, so I've been told, I've not been sent to whiskey school yet. That would be called the Betty Ford, you know, and AA, whatever. They're gonna tell you have to change your playmates and your playgrounds. And, you know, there's a lot of people that still wanna go out. So there was a sober club in Oklahoma City where they had mocktails.
Yeah.
And, you know, everything on the menu was, you know, a non-alcoholic drink. So I mean, I think that, you know, you've got like the feel of, for a lot of people, there's a tactile aspect. Smoking is one of those, that it gives you something, a lot of people smoke because it gives you historically something to do.
Yeah.
Right? So, do you think the ad was effective?
Absolutely.
You think it's absolutely effective?
Yeah. Does anyone else have a water ad for the one they picked?
How would you measure that effectiveness?
I think by the fact that they were trending afterwards, because any ad created nowadays is wanting to trend. That's the main point. Because in the moment, absolutely, you want to have people's attention. You want to have, you know, their eyes on your product. But afterwards is almost more important, in my opinion. The fact that it stays relevant and that it creates a theme for their marketing, because you can go on their page, you can look at any of their ads, they're the same. They're the same way. So I think it was effective because it sticks on brand, it creates memorability, and it keeps people talking.
So you think memorable is another aspect,
Absolutely.
and what else did you say?
That was a couple seconds ago. I lost that.
It drives consumers to do, you know, at least look at the product, research the product. It stays memorable, it has a lasting impact on consumers. They're gonna remember the ad.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. The use of children is, I think, ethically problematic. It's not ethically problematic or not as much to use a pregnant woman, because obviously, you know, at some point you have autonomy and the ability to make independent choices. So
My money's on, she wasn't even pregnant. That was just a suit.
Your money is that was a
That was a
fake.
suit, yeah.
Okay, they can do that, that's true.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's it. All those kids were CG actually. They were all fake.
That is, that is an issue. Could you do this? I mean, if you're not using actual children, which you can do, you can create, realistic avatars now and not have actual children. You can use composites of various, facial, types and come up with, sort of generic people to fit in. So, I think, that's an interesting ad. I think it does have some ethically problematic aspects, even though the product, by and large, on the whole, as a product itself, doesn't necessarily have those kinds of ethical aspects. I think we're all drinking a lot more water. We're aware that a lot of the drinks that have historically been popular are probably not great for us, and we should probably drink more water. And so if you're gonna do that, this seems to be a product that is not just, mindful of the fact that we need to have more alternatives to drinking sugary, carbonated, caffeinated beverages, but also packaged in an ethically sensitive and sustainable method. Because as you pointed out, that the plastics are not necessarily great. They are coming up with plastics that are more biodegradable, that can, go back. They're using it particularly with flatware, like forks and knives and things like that, that are made out of soy, that are compostable. So, okay, I think it's a good ad.
Have you had one, a liquid death?
Had one what?
A liquid death?
A liquid, yeah, I have not. Have
Um,
you?
Yeah.
You have. Is it good? Is it
It's
good?
good, yeah.
I mean,
They have like
water-
6 different flavors.
A lot of people think water is water and it's not. I mean, I can tell the difference between tap water and bottled water.
It's good water.
And you can tell the difference in water taste from city to city, particularly if you don't drink other things that destroy your taste buds, like Diet Coke or Coke that have high acidic levels. So you can distinguish between different types of water. All right. So let's look at this one. All right, so that one was a really powerful ad. Why did you all choose this ad?
Well, we chose it initially because we thought it was empowering.
Okay.
So it kind of shows different aspects of what it means to do something like a girl, I guess. There's one that was very stereotypical. So I guess the beginning of it was people doing motions what they thought was kind of like what a girl would do. And the second part was actual young ladies doing the motions and doing it strongly and proudly. And I also brought up the fact that the phrase "like a girl" was almost demoralizing. Like it was almost like a reference to The Sandlot, to whenever both of the teams were trying to go against each other, and then the last like phrase was "you play ball like a girl," which was kind of seen as a very shocking and demoralizing phrase to say. So it's been around for quite some time. So it's, I guess, something that in time, this campaign is trying to change that and to have young people do things as themselves, more or less.
So the Equal Rights Amendment, which would have enshrined in the United States Constitution equality based on gender, did not pass. There is a movement to try, they had set a sunset for it to pass. So the way the United States Constitution has to be amended is there are two ways of proposing amendments. One way we've never ever used, and then there are two ways of ratifying amendments. One has been used, one has never been used. So amendments can be proposed when a supermajority of both houses of Congress submit a proposal for amendment change to the United States Constitution to the states, and then a supermajority of the states, either by state legislature vote or by vote of conventions in the states, have to ratify the proposal. The other way that amendments can be proposed is if a supermajority of states call on Congress to propose an amendment and then submit it back to the states. We have never had a majority of the states propose an amendment. They've always come from Congress, and they've always been submitted to the legislatures of the various states. The one exception to that was the amendment that repealed prohibition. So the repeal of prohibition, which I think is the 21st Amendment, let me make sure that's correct.
That sounds right,
21st.
because the legal drinking age is 21, that's how I would just have to remember it.
Let me just make sure that is correct. Absolutely. The 18th Amendment to the United States Constitution is hereby repealed. The 18th was the one that is enshrined prohibition. This was the only example of positive law really being written into the Constitution, was the 18th Amendment. Most of the document is sort of about organic law, but that was the only one that was submitted to a vote of constitutional conventions in the states. And the reason they did that is because they thought that it wouldn't pass if it went to state legislatures, which historically tend to be more dominated by conservative elements. And so they wanted to get the repeal of prohibition passed because it was not stopping people from drinking, right? So it was a completely sort of useless amendment in terms of trying to enforce it, because people were finding all kinds of ways, and all it did was create a huge organized, crime syndicate culture that supplied Americans with liquor, and it was dangerous because You know, they were selling moonshine and that was not regulated and there were all kinds of things that could go wrong with that. The reason I tell you all this is because the Equal Rights Amendment was submitted and it didn't reach the threshold for ratification in the states. And once again, the debate over equal rights is come up in the United States Constitution. So I think this ad is really timely in terms of thinking about gender equality, which we still don't have in this country. Women still make less. Women are the majority of the population. There are slightly more women than there are men in the population. Now, it's gotten a little bit more equal because the way we fight wars no longer requires casualties of huge numbers of people, except of course in Ukraine, where the casualties on both sides are reaching, you know, World War I proportions. But the way we fight wars now is very targeted. So historically, it required a lot of men to go off and fight. Women are now engaged in the fighting. They're engaged in combat roles. And so that sort of equaled it out. But historically, men went off and fought. That led to even more, when you get into the 20s and 30s, more women than men. And by the time you get to the 50s and 60s, historically, women lived longer than men, slightly longer. And that's no longer true as they've entered the workforce, but there are more women than there are men. Women now make up a majority of law school, right? I think they make up a majority of medical school admissions at this point in time. Women make up a majority of college admissions. And so you have a majority of the population who still has, by all objective standards, pay inequity in the workplace. And so I think this ad highlights that. I think it does a good job of it. What did you think do you think there's anything ethically problematic with the ad?
Problematic, I probably would have to say just, I guess, the way it kind of started off.
Okay,
But
why is that problematic?
because all of the contestants did something in their perspective, how they feel someone would have done it that was a young girl.
Okay,
And so I felt like that was kind of like a stereotypical way that they did it at first.
and so you think that in the beginning, people could misconstrue the ad and base their reaction based on stereotypes?
Yeah,
I mean, that's a long ad to watch. How many people are actually gonna watch? How long was that ad? Was it 2 minutes?
those three.
3 minutes. I mean, how many people are gonna watch? One of the things I have to do in this class is, in order to keep your attention, because we know that you are used to 30-second sound bites, is I have to walk around, I have to throw ducks at you, ask questions, change my inflection, look over your shoulder to see if you're actually paying attention or if you're on Snapchat or whatever else it is that you're using these days to communicate. And so how many people are gonna watch that commercial to the end? We did, because we're a marketing class. How many people is it gonna reinforce the stereotypes of what it means to be a girl? I don't know. I think another ethical issue for that ad is who developed the ad. Okay, you actually remembered that. I'm surprised. Did you all even remember who developed the ad? It was Always. So,
One of
That was the problem with that.
is that ad promoting product? Is anybody going to recall that Always was the originator of the ad? Does that ad have anything to do with the product?
No.
Other than they're talking about females.
Unfortunately, I think that people are gonna leave like watching that and they're gonna think, man, that was like empowering. That was like, that is so true about women. Like, I shouldn't say that or whatever. Or women are like, this is so true. I love that. But like, no one knows like that's actually for like women's material. Like what? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, no one's gonna know.
Yeah, I mean, you're using corporate resources and always, I think, is, you know, a large corporation that's public, I don't know, I haven't looked at this to know, but I'm gonna imagine that those corporations tend to be fairly, you know, products like that tend to be publicly traded corporations, although there are industries where you find vast majorities of the companies are not publicly traded, they're privately held. For example, shipping industries, you would think that those would all be publicly traded, they're not, they're closely held in many instances. So is this a good use of corporate resources to promote, you know, a societal goal?
A good use of corporate resources, I would probably say maybe.
Maybe, I think that's the correct answer, actually. I think
by societal.
maybe actually is the correct answer because we don't know, and it's very hard to determine what impact that is gonna have in terms of people having good feelings. I mean, what we ultimately hope when corporations engage in corporate social responsibility and they engage in things like this, which this is obviously, this is not a direct promotion of Always. But what you ultimately hope as a result of this is that people have a better feeling towards the brand than they did before. And we know this is not so true among generations that are older than me, but among younger generations, you people are more interested in whether or not a company is acting in an environmentally sustainable and ethical fashion. And obviously promoting, you know, equality is more sustainable. I mean, we're going through a period of enormous cultural turmoil in this country. And I can tell you, this is not a partisan statement. It's a statement of fact. Every time people who have been on the side of restricting rights, historically, they have not been looked upon favorably. I mean, history has not been kind to people who are, you know, I mean, that's just a fact. So, you know, I think it's highlighting something, and maybe your generation does feel more favorable towards companies that engage in what we view as being socially responsible. Historically, and what Milton Friedman would have said is business only exists to make money. And if you're not making money, you are diminishing shareholder returns, and that's an illegitimate use of resources. I don't think, I think people expect companies to be ethically sensitive. This is happening with Disney. Disney has taken a political stand against what, you know, the state of Florida wants to do in terms of education. And there has been enormous backlash on the part of a governor. And I can tell you who's probably going to lose that little pissing match that they're in. We have rewritten the copyright code for Disney in this country. That's how powerful Disney is. We have rewritten copyright law just for Disney. So I'm pretty certain that he's into this match. They come unprepared to deal with that. Historically, Milton Friedman would have said, you know, anything that might turn off customers would be a bad thing and you shouldn't engage in it. But your generation particularly are influenced by corporations that they view as being socially responsible. So I think it's a good ad. It's a long ad. I don't know how many people are actually gonna watch it to the end, but I think it was a good ad. I don't know that if you are measuring the ad in terms of its ROI, I'm not sure that it's a great ad. If you're looking for but if you're looking for something else, which is we're going to say that we are a ethically sensitive company and we engage in corporate social responsibility, I think it was a fairly effective ad. So good job on that one. Let's see, who else? I'm still waiting. I've only got two.
Ours should, I think you should refresh it maybe,
Okay.
because I was posted pretty early and it wasn't showing.
Switch monitors. Okay.
Wow.
Whoa.
Wow.
All right, so why did you all choose this ad?
It's catchy. We thought it was humorous and a lot of people like gravitate to humor and they remember it more.
Okay,
It reminded me of like a furniture ad.
Yeah, it grabs your attention.
Okay,
They're
so
trying to
it
sell you something.
gets your attention.
You're gonna remember the 4.
You're gonna remember, memorable, so we have that one, got attention.
They're trying to sell you on like something that
What were they selling?
it's like law service.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think for car-related accidents.
It's a personal injury.
Yeah, so they make you seem like you're going to get like a really big,
Like a big amount.
Right,
It said the net.
we put up a settlement that we had,
yeah, which was
Yeah.
5 something.
5 something, this
5
3
million, and then he
million.
said 3 million to the client.
60/40
So,
split, I think.
yeah, so that's, I mean, that's impressive.
But then also like I looked
How-
at the
yeah.
case and you were gonna listen, you know, like it was a drunk driver that just directly hit another car and I think it was like someone younger. So, and then it was just their net pay, so then they still had to pay them for their fees and stuff after that.
It's like what they're not telling you is unethical. In a sense.
Well, they told you what the split was. I mean, usually car wreck cases and things like that are done on a contingency basis. So if you don't win, the attorney doesn't get anything. The thing that may be unethical in that instance is that the attorney has an incentive to pressure you to settle for maybe less than you would get at trial
Yeah.
because it's expensive to go to trial. Trials are enormously expensive to go through. And so it's all about, you know, a trade-off. So if you have a contingency fee arrangement, now the upside to that is that lots of people could not afford an attorney's hourly fee and the cost of expert witnesses and all of that you would have to go to trial. And so it allows people who are injured a method of obtaining an attorney that ensures that they're not gonna have to front a lot of money out of pocket. But, you know, there's an attorney here in town that advertises, and I won't give you the name, but it's the name of the attorney wins. Well, yeah, but I've seen cases where I think they left money on the table. Is that ethical? No, it's 2 men. And I've seen, you know, like, yeah, if you accept the first settlement offer, you've got a pretty good win-loss ratio there. It's about not accepting the first offer, right? It's about driving. Now, attorneys have they have an incentive to get as much as they can in a contingency fee arrangement, but that has to be balanced against how many clients do you have to have. Most attorneys can't afford to just have 1 or 2 clients at a time. And so it's about basically doing an analysis on how much time can you afford to spend on any particular case. If you've got, say, 100 clients at any given time, you've got a staff that's having to work and you're paying them, the attorneys are paying them by the hour. Should attorneys, when my law partner, who's recently passed away, started in law practice, attorneys were not allowed to advertise their services. The only thing you could do is you could take out an ad that said, I'm starting an office, or I'm moving, or we've added a partner to the office, or something like that. And it was very specific requirements of what you could do. It had to be what was called a tombstone ad. So it could only be in like black and white and just sort of the facts. That's what, you just, on a tombstone, what do you put? Just the facts. Basically, the name, date of birth, date of death, and, maybe like attorney, father, husband, something like that you can't write somebody's life story on most tombstones, right? So this is why they call it a tombstone ad. At that point in time, I think one of the things that happened is that we've degraded the legal profession because it's viewed as just any other service. And doctors are the same way. They advertise and you see all kinds of, services that they offer, particularly in the aesthetics realm. And I think it's just viewed as any other sort of like person, like hair care or anything else. And these people have enormous power over individuals' lives. And you could really do some major damage. I'm not sure that our love of the First Amendment should have won out over all else in that scenario. Okay, let's see.
I just added a random document because I didn't know. But that link is our link.
Okay. So why did you choose this ad?
We think it plays into Apple's values, their leading role into innovation at the time. They were seen as another computer company next to Microsoft, but they were trying to lead the way in a whole new innovation. They aired this ad for 4 years because it was so successful in resonating with an audience that it was looking for. And overall, it's pretty inspirational. It uses a lot of it was done in 1997. So it was like a lot of the figures they used were from like the Civil War era and not the Civil War era, the Civil Rights era. Just some pretty prominent figures throughout history that looked at things differently, but still were able to have a big impact on the world.
And they actually ran the ad for 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years.
Wow, that's a long time for an ad campaign to continue on.
97 and 2000.
Particularly in that time frame. I mean, if you went back, to the 1970s, like Coca-Cola ran a very similar ad for years and years and years when I was a kid, it was we want to teach the world to sing ad, and they played it at Christmas, and it was an effective ad, and I don't know how many years that ran, but in this day and age, when you have to like constantly be innovating, I'm not sure that works real well.
Yeah,
So
no.
it's odd that they left it for that long of time. Do you think most people remember the ad? Apparently they did, because it played for 4 years. They kept it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a super famous quote. That whole quote that was said throughout it is by Steve Jobs himself.
Mhm.
So that became a famous quote, and yeah. I thought the ad was pretty inspirational. It resonates with the Apple audience of wanting to change the world, see things differently, get outside the box of whatever we were stuck in before with just Microsoft or however it may have been.
What ethical implications do you think the ad has?
That maybe Apple might only be for the crazy ones,
Okay.
the innovators, keep the kind of average Joe away from the company in a sense.
What about the use of other people's image, even though they're dead? Almost all of those people were dead. The use of their image without their permission, and they're basically their legacy to promote your product. I mean, that's basically what Elon Musk has done with he's taken a guy's name and made it into a car company. And is that ethical to use somebody's legacy in that way? When obviously they can't consent.
But I mean,
And
I don't think they were
they're-
talking about their legacy in any negative connotations whatsoever. It's more saying that they were the ones that were able to look at the world differently, change the world for the better for what they did. And
They're
then
actually, but they're also calling them crazy.
Yeah.
here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, troublemakers, the
Yeah.
ones that, the square pegs that don't fit in the round holes. Just people that see the world differently, I think is how they were shooting for it. But it was a super successful ad campaign.
Okay. That's one of the ones that I've seen less ethically objective objections that I can come up with, because it does promote the product. It's not a product that is really, is of significant harm, other than we're mining a whole lot of rare earth minerals to come up with semiconductor or, that we use in those kinds of things. So maybe that presents some challenge, but at this point in time, human history is on the whole benefited from the computer, I guess. Although I did tell my cousin, who is a computer architect, I think I told you the story, that I thought his profession was responsible for 75% of the human suffering in the developed world, because he came to visit his mother and he spent his entire time just jumping on a Zoom meeting. Can you just jump on a Zoom meeting here and help us out with this? Whereas in the past, in the olden times, when I was growing up in the 1980s, if somebody went on vacation, you couldn't ask them. They were gone. They didn't, even if they had a cell phone, reception was generally spotty, and you couldn't get, a hold of them, and you didn't know where grandma lived or their mother lived, and you wouldn't have called. But now we think nothing about just picking up the phone and saying, I know you're on vacation, but can you just take 5 minutes? Well, 5 minutes becomes, like 10, and then you have multiple Zoom meetings. So I think that is one thing that maybe computer technology has disadvantaged us in some respects. Let's see. Did I get everybody?
No, I think ours is probably on top. Maybe it's not.
That's ours.
That's theirs.
You see the name there?
I'll refresh it and see if it comes.
Would it be on the second page?
Yes,
Bless you.
Thank you.
yeah.
There we go. All right, so why did you all choose that ad?
It's really familiar. Almost everyone and their mother can, knows what the Wizard of Oz is,
Uh-huh.
and that scene too.
I mean, even kids today are still watching The Wizard of Oz after all these years. You would think that that would not be that popular of a movie.
I'll say everyone knows it, so it's super relatable. So for FedEx, good to use that because anyone can, identify with the Wizard of Oz, and the Munchkins are funny, so everyone has a good laugh with it.
What ethical issues did you think that the ad presented?
FedEx delivers drugs.
FedEx delivers drugs?
That too.
Okay, what else did you?
That what you were saying earlier, is using the likeness of the Wizard of Oz, maybe without their permission. I'm not sure, but
I'm sure they had to have, I'm sure they had to have the
yeah.
copyright hold.
There was, some of those scenes were like straight from the movie, like they
Yeah.
didn't even try to do anything different with it.
Right.
It's kind of hard to in the 2000s because that movie's from like what?
Oh, yeah, it could be the disability.
Yeah, but I think the copyright is still because of Disney. I think
Well,
the
I
copyright.
meant taking scenes directly from the movie, it would be hard to like reshoot other things
Yeah.
because of how old it was.
That's true. All right, I think you guys came up with some good ads. What makes an ad great? And having studied this for a long time, the things that I think make an ad great are that it engages the mind of the consumer and it delivers a selling message. That's what I think makes an ad great, is that it engages the mind of the consumer and it delivers a selling message. Some of these didn't deliver selling messages, or at least not the message that, maybe the company wanted to deliver. When we think about the ethicality in terms of the impact on consumers, what we have to think about is whether or not the will is overborne. And we talked about this with the CTCA ads, that if you are in a vulnerable position, you may not be making the best judgments. And are we overbearing on the will by making promises that people obviously are not necessarily capable of evaluating because of the credence properties? With regard to the lawyer ad, for example, how do you evaluate good lawyers? Well, my students always say things like, we evaluate lawyers on the basis of win-law ratio. Well, some of the dumbest people I went to law school with have great winning ratios because they went into the district attorney's office. If you can't figure out that when I went to law school, it was $900 a credited hour. If you can't figure out that you cannot take a $35,000 a year job after you've paid $900 a credited hour, you're a candidate for natural deselection, in my opinion. You need to, but they have great win-loss ratios because the criminals are dumber than them. There's a reason they're criminals, because they're dumb. And it's not hard, but they have fantastic, they have 99.9% win-loss ratios.
Is getting a
How do you
plea for your,
evaluate
is getting a plea for your, client considered a win?
if it's considered a victory for the district attorney's office because they get a conviction out of it. I mean, they if you look at what they measure win-loss in terms of criminal law is whether or not you got a conviction. Is getting a plea for your client a win if you're a defense attorney? It depends. If your client's really innocent, but they just can't afford to go to trial, is that a win? I mean, if they just decide, well, I'm facing, 2 or 3 years in jail versus 10 or life or something like that, is that a win? I would suggest probably for the cause of justice, it's not. The way we do funding of public defenders' offices is absolutely abysmal. If the Sixth Amendment to the United States Constitution meant anything, it would mean that public defenders' offices would be staffed and funded at the same level as district attorneys' offices. Because what we see, generally speaking in criminal law, is that if the defendant can go toe-to-toe or more than the prosecution, they have exceptional odds of getting off. Whether or not you thought OJ did it, I have a tendency to think OJ didn't do it, but what it did prove is that if you can come up with the dream team of lawyers, you can definitely outmaneuver the prosecution in that. So I think we have to think about these. Are we dealing with vulnerable populations? Are they children? And are we overbearing the will? That's why, one of the reasons why in places like Europe, they don't allow direct consumer advertising of pharmaceutical products, and they don't allow direct consumer marketing to children. McDonald's can't, put their ads out for the newest and latest toy that they have in a in a Happy Meal because it's not viewed as being ethically okay. We're the only country that says, we have this First Amendment, and we're just gonna let you run amok with the First Amendment, unless it, falls into very specific categories where we have limited free speech. But generally speaking, corporations have free speech just like individuals do. And so, we have some interesting results in this country. And I think businesses, particularly those that do market to vulnerable populations, the elderly, patients that have dreaded diseases, children, things like that, disadvantaged groups, I think we have to really think about what we're doing. I am out of time. I'm gonna work as hard as I can to get the third essay graded. You have until Friday to complete the fourth exam. I got all of the articles. Did I get everybody's article review graded? If I didn't, send me an email. If you submitted it late or something and I didn't get it, let me know.
Can we come back here next week?
Nope.
Okay.
We don't meet next week, so I hope you all enjoy your summer break. And I will see some of you in the fall. Some of you are graduating. So you're gone. Adam, you're gone, right? Cooper, you're gone. So
I'm here, don't worry.
you're here. Thanks. Have a good afternoon.
Did you say exam or essay on the fourth? Did you say exam or essay on the, I'll do on Friday?
It's all done. It's all done.
What are you grading? An
The article.
essay?
Oh, I haven't finished grading the third essay. The third essay.
Like on the.
The exam?
On exam three. There are four
okay.
exams.
I was like,
haven't-
hold on. I was like.
You had me nervous.
Yeah,
I was
I was like,
like,
I couldn't get into the